2.5 million years ago, a volcano in Tanzania blew its top completely off. It left a crater 610 metres deep with an area of about 265 square kilometres. Today it's known as Ngorongoro. The Ngorongoro crater is the largest complete volcanic caldera in the world. The crater rim is 2,286 metres above sea level. It's about 19 kilometres across. It contains up to 30,000 game animals, most of the animals that you find in East Africa, except for giraffes and impala. Up to 20% of the zebras and half the wildebeeste vacate the crater in the wet season. Buffalo, on the other hand, and eland do the opposite. The downside of being in the Ngorongoro is that there's an awful lot of Toyota Landcruisers. It reminded me more of being in a safari park in the UK than actually being out in the wilds of Africa. Come on, baby. There's lots of zebra foals around at this time of the year, and February is also calving time for the wildebeeste. There's a soda lake in the crater, Magadi. Great for flamingos, not great for drinking out of. But there's lots of other smaller lakes and streams, providing fresh water for the animals. Always nice to see some Coke's hartebeeste, although surprisingly, no topi in the crater. This was my first ever sighting of a black rhino in the wild. There are only about 4,500 of them worldwide. This is the best place in Tanzania to see one, because normally black rhinos are browsers and tend to live in thick bush. Both black and white rhinos are being driven ever closer to extinction due to a massive increase in poaching. This has been fueled by demand for rhino horn and elephant ivory by the middle classes in countries such as China and especially Vietnam for rhinos. The global trade in illegal wildlife is estimated to be about $19 billion a year. At the moment, governments just don't seem to be taking the problem seriously enough. The poachers and the criminal gangs are definitely winning the war.
Sijaenda huko.
This is also a great place to see eland, because out of the crater they tend to be very skittish, and all you usually see of them is the back end as they disappear. There are a lot of elephants in the crater, all of which are bulls, A lot of them are pretty old and they tend to carry rather large sets of ivory. The elephants are most often seen in the woodlands and the marsh areas. This is an abdim stork. Tens of thousands of them come down from northern parts of Africa in the rainy season. With all the rain and the fresh green grass, it looks like an absolute paradise for all these warthogs, zebras, wildebeeste. But just below the surface, nature is still there, red in tooth and claw.
Run, baby, run!
The high numbers of ungulates just means easy pickings for all the predators, such as these hyenas, especially during calving time. We'll never know how this particular chase finished, because it got really too difficult to film from a moving vehicle, and then anyway we lost sight of the wildebeeste behind a dip in the ground. There's two types of gazelles present in Ngorongoro. These are the little Thompson's gazelles that can live in the harshest of environment and need very little water. And then there's the slightly larger, slightly more elegant Grant's gazelle. There are between 60 and 70 lions in the crater. This is probably the highest density of lions anywhere in Africa. The crater lions are significantly inbred. This is due to the fact that very few lions enter the crater from the outside. The ones that do tend to get driven off by the resident males because they're generally bigger. The lack of genetic diversity seems to make the lions more vulnerable to disease. Periodically the numbers get thinned out quite a lot by particularly canine distemper. I find it quite unbelievable that they built a picnic site right next to a lake full of hippos. There's no fence to keep them in. Everybody just wanders about as though there's nothing there. Hippos are reckoned to be one of the most dangerous animals in Africa. Quite often they've been seen to bite crocodiles in half. And yes, I'm just as daft as everyone else, sitting there trying to get a half decent picture. Although this crater is pretty spectacular and full of game, there's far too many tourists for me. It's just far too busy. After a 6-hour maximum stay, by mid-afternoon it was time to drive out of the crater, over the rim, across the Ngorongoro highlands and head west for the Serengeti proper.